We all live by laws, some that make sense to us, others that feel outdated, maybe even unfair. But where do these laws come from? Why are they the way they are? And can they ever be perfect? As a lawyer, I spend my days working within the framework of laws, navigating through statutes and regulations. But today, let's take a step back. Let's look at the philosophy behind these systems we operate in every day. How did we get here? And what makes a law good? To understand the philosophy behind law, we have to go back, way back, around 1754 BC. King Hammurabi of Mesopotamia etched a set of laws into stone. Literally, the Code of Hammurabi was one of the first known legal systems dealing with everything, from theft to marriage. This was more than just rules. It was an attempt to bring order to chaos. But here is the catch. It was far from fair. If you were wealthy or part of the elite, the laws favored you. For commoners, the punishments were often brutal. Think eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. One example, take Law 19:6. If a man destroys the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. Harsh, but the inequality is even more pronounced in Law 19:8, which says, if he destroys the eye of a commoner, he shall pay 1 mina of silver. Essentially, the punishment depended not on the act, but on who the victim was. A wealthy man's eye was more worthy than a poor man's, which seems outrageous to us now. So while this system brought structure, it lacked something we now consider essential: justice. The punishment wasn't equal. It was tiered based on status, a principle that would be unacceptable in today's legal systems. Fast forward to ancient Rome, where things get a little more sophisticated. The Romans introduced the idea of natural law, the belief that laws should reflect universal moral principles. Think of it this way: instead of laws just being made up by rulers, they should mirror something deeper. What's inherently right or wrong? Take Cicero, for example, a Roman philosopher and statesman. He argued that there's a higher law, one that doesn't come from kings or governments, but from nature itself. For Cicero, true law is reason in agreement with nature existing universally and eternally. He famously said, "True law is right reason in agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting." A particular law Cicero championed, which reflected this concept of natural law, was his opposition to the dictatorship of Julius Caesar. Cicero believed that Caesar's authoritarian rule violated natural justice because it subverted the Roman Republic's traditions of democracy and equality before the law. Cicero saw Caesar's laws as unjust because they were not aligned with universal principles of freedom and fairness. He argued that no ruler could create laws that went against these natural higher laws. He implied that laws derived from tyranny or oppression were invalid because they didn't stem from reason or the natural order of justice. His belief in the supremacy of natural law over man-made law still echoes today, especially in debates about human rights and constitutional law. In many ways, we still grapple with Cicero's question today: should laws always sign with morality, or can legal systems function on practical enforcement alone? This leads us to a pivotal debate in legal philosophy, one that has shaped the evolution of law for centuries. Here's where things get really interesting: the clash between natural law and positive law. Natural law theorists argue that laws should be based on moral principles. On the other hand, positive law insists that law is whatever human institutions decide it is, whether it's just or not. Think of it like this: natural law asks, is this law right? While positive law asks, is this law enforceable? Martin Luther King Jr., for instance, famously relied on natural law. He said that an unjust law is no law at all, challenging the legal structures of his time. It's a powerful argument, one that still echoes in today's legal battles. But while King's argument feels universal, legal systems across the world have evolved in unique ways, each reflecting different philosophies about justice and order. Broadly speaking, we can categorize the world's legal systems into 4 major types: common law, civil law, religious law, and customary law. But here's the key: these systems are not just different methods of applying rules. They reflect the values, histories, and even the struggles of the societies they govern. Take the common law system, which began in England and is now used in places like the United States, Canada, and India. It's based on precedent. Judges look to past decisions to guide their rulings. In a sense, it's a conversation with history. Judges aren't just following a code, but are interpreting the principles of justice that have evolved through time. It's dynamic, reflecting a system that grows with society, adapting to change while trying to remain consistent with its roots. Contrast that with civil systems. You find these in countries like France, Germany, and Japan. Civil law is all about structure. It traces its roots to Roman law, especially under Emperor Justinian and later to Napoleon Napoleon's civil code. Here, everything is codified, written down in detailed legal text. Why? The idea was to create certainty. In a civil law system, the rules are laid out clearly so that people know exactly what's expected of them. It's less flexible than common law, but the point is to provide a predictable, almost scientific approach to justice. But here is the connection to our broader theme. Civil law systems emerged from a desire for control and order. In ancient Rome, law was a tool for managing a sprawling empire, just like in Napoleonic France. It was about reshaping society after chaos. The law wasn't just about fairness, it was about enforcing a certain vision of society. This gives a civil law more rigid, top-down approach where everything is clear, but maybe too clear. In some ways, it sacrifices flexibility to predictability. Then there is Islamic law, or Sharia, which offers an entirely different perspective. In countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran, law is inseparable from religion. Here, the source of law isn't precedent or written codes, but divine instruction. The focus shifts from human justice to moral and spiritual duties. It's not just a legal system, it's a way of life. But again, we see this universal theme, law as a guide for living in harmony with something larger than ourselves, whether that's divine will or natural law. And then we have customary law, found in some African and Pacific Island nations. The system is deeply tied to tradition, with rules passed down through generations. Customary law is flexible because it's rooted in the lived experience of communities. It's not always written down, and it can evolve with the people it governs. But even here, the goal is the same: to create social harmony, to ensure that disputes are resolved in a way that maintains the balance of the community. Now, why does all this matter? Because while these systems seem vastly different, they all stem from a common human need to create order, predictability, and justice. Whether it's through precedent, written code, religious principles, or ancestral customs, every legal system is an attempt to answer the same question: how do we create a fair and functioning society? Across all systems, there is one principle that holds everything together: the rule of law. This is the idea that no one, not even rulers or governments, are above the law. But what happens when that principle is challenged? Consider a situation in a country where legal codes are clear, but their interpretation sometimes shifts under external pressures. In one case, a small business owner found themselves locked in a property rights dispute. Although the law protecting property was well established, the local authorities had reinterpreted certain zoning regulations, allowing a large corporation, one with strong connections and influence, to benefit from a favorable ruling. Here, the law itself wasn't the issue, it was the way it was applied. The case highlighted how those with influence can sometimes shift legal interpretations to serve their interests, subtly altering the balance of justice. This kind of situation is not unique to a country. We see it all across the globe, where powerful entities, whether corporate or individuals, find ways to navigate legal systems to their advantage. When this happens, the rule of law becomes fragile and public trust in justice begins to waver. As lawyers, we see this challenge often. Our role isn't just to follow the law, it's to ensure the law is applied fairly, even when the powerful try to twist it. It's about protecting justice and ensuring that no one, no matter how influential, is above the law. So, after all of this, we come to the big question: can law ever be perfect? History has shown us that laws are human creations, and as humans, we're fallible. Hammurabi's code was brutal. Cicero's ideals were lofty. Today, legal systems are far from flawless. But as we move forward, especially with the rise of technology, we're facing new challenges. Artificial intelligence is already being used to predict legal outcomes and streamline processes. But could AI create a more perfect legal system, one free from human biases? In 2014, a company named Deep Knowledge Ventures appointed an algorithm, Vital, to its board of directors. It was meant to help with investment decisions, analyzing data without the emotional biases of humans. Imagine that applied to law. Could AI render judgments that are more impartial, more just? In the end, maybe the pursuit of a perfect legal system is a journey rather than a destination. Laws must evolve, adapt, and reflect the societies they govern. As lawyers, our job is to keep questioning, improving, and holding the law accountable to the very ideals it promises: justice, fairness, and equality. What do you think? Is there such a thing as a perfect law, or is the imperfection part of it what makes it work? Thank you for listening.